Welcome to Revolutionary Marketing. With me tonight is Troy Marshall, and I'm Johnette Gottsweiler. We are so excited for you to join in this evening to learn more about feeder calf marketing. Just in case we happen to go dark, we have been having rolling blackouts through St. Joseph, Missouri. So know that the presentation will be posted tomorrow once we get that recorded. Tonight, if you have any questions during the presentation, you'll notice a question and answer on your webinar screen. Please feel free at any time to Zoom those questions or to type those questions in, and Troy and I will be able to answer those later for you. We really look forward. We hope you guys are nice and toasty and ready to dial in and learn more about feeder calf marketing with Troy tonight. And Troy Marshall is our Director of Commercial Industry Relations. He's obviously been a seedstock producer, as many of you well know. He's a great cattleman, and he is definitely going to lead you through the marketing revolution.
Thanks, Johnette. I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk to you all this evening about the marketing revolution that I believe is transforming our industry for the betterment of everyone involved. I know how valuable your time is, and I really look forward to spending the next hour or so with you. And I'd like to say I would feel a little more comfortable having this conversation one-on-one, but I'm really passionate about the subject, and I hope that comes through as I give this presentation looking at this camera. And tonight we're going to talk about why this revolution is needed, why it is important, and finally, how your operation can benefit from it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time lecturing y'all about how the industry is changing more rapidly than any time in history, even though I believe it is. And after 2020, I don't want to hear the words unprecedented change or the need to pivot ever again. Nevertheless, I do believe that things are evolving so rapidly in our business that it's important for all producers to have a strategy and a plan to deal with these changes and to keep their operation profitable and sustainable in the future. There are two things that we've probably learned in the last 24 months, and that's one is that our industry is both incredibly resilient and also incredibly vulnerable. You know, our industry is special. Its traditions and its values are foundational, but it doesn't mean that it will continue to thrive or even survive if we don't continue to drive positive change. We've learned that we need to mitigate risk, we need to increase profits, and we need to increase margins as well. That is why it's time for a change. Another part in the marketplace is we know that there is no greater leverage than the truth, but it has turned out to be a little more of a monumental task than anyone thought it was going to be to put truth in the forefront of the feeder cattle marketing system. And while I'm confident that this revolution of verifying the genetic merit of the cattle and incorporating that information into the pricing equation is going to be a tremendous benefit both to the cow-calf industry and the industry as a whole, we understand that not everyone is going to support these changes because there are some that benefit from the status quo. That is why it is time for a change. You know, changing the rules of the game is not always an easy thing. My family has always loved playing Scrabble over the holidays. We have a bunch of A-type personalities and we get pretty competitive with it. This Christmas break, one of my kids actually read the rules for the first time, and we found out that we had been incorrectly keeping score all these years. And even though we knew that the change made the game more competitive, it was fair, and it did a better job of rewarding who should win, it was still difficult to make that adjustment. And to kind of illustrate this point even a little bit further, I had a phone call with a good friend and cattleman several months back, and we were discussing all these changes. And a couple weeks later, he called me back up and he said, you know, Troy, ever since we had that conversation, I've slept like a baby. Well, I puffed my chest up a little bit and said, man, I'm glad to hear that. What was it that I said, you know, that put your mind at ease? And he said, no, I don't think you understand. When I said I slept like a baby, I mean I sleep for an hour, I wake up crying, I grab for the bottle. I sleep for an hour, I wake up crying, I grab for the bottle. A little more serious note, I mentioned that I'm really excited about this talk, and part of that is because I'm excited for the future of the cattle industry. And I'm also excited in that I believe that the Angus Link program can play a very positive role in this marketing revolution. When I talk about being bullish on the industry, I'm really positive for the next 3 to 5 years and even longer term as we look out ahead. I kind of see 2021 as being a year of transition, where we transition from grinding out things in the present and begin to look forward to the future again. And I would kind of describe my outlook as a short-term realist and long-term optimist. As a realist, I realize that we have more than a little uncertainty right now in the political environment that we're operating in. We're still dealing with a global pandemic, and we have ample supplies of cattle here on the front end. But with all that said, there's a lot to be positive about. We're in the right place in the cattle cycle. The calf crop in 2019 and 2020 were smaller. Placements have been smaller. Numbers outside of feed yard are trending in the right direction, as are carcass weights. Really, when you look at everything from a supply standpoint, looking ahead, we're going into a very good time. I think it's actually is equally as good from a demand front and maybe even better. As we move past this post-COVID era, I really expect exports to increase, and they've been fairly good. Even in the year of 2020, the great outlier year here, while exports were down on the year, the first and fourth quarters were actually record for beef exports. And I really expect the hotel restaurant trade to come back with a fervor as the economy begins to recover. You know, a lot of the experts are calling a big boom where we just release all this pent-up demand as the restaurants come back online. Even some of them are comparing this time period to the Roaring '20s, where consumers wanted to make up for lost time after World War II. It really is amazing to me to see how well that demand is held together, with restaurants being either closed or running at partial capacity. But the thing that probably makes me the most bullish is retail beef demand and the demand for high quality beef. It's kind of ironic, but this pandemic has been positive for beef demand. And the reason I say that is because we put more high quality beef in the retail meat case than we ever had before. And a lot of consumers that didn't get to consume that quality of product got to try it for the first time and they liked it. I don't think they're going back. Another plus is that while we were all cooped up in home, a whole new generation learned how to cook and prepare a product and the value of sitting down with the family. I don't think anyone predicted, and I certainly didn't, that CAB and prime product would have continued to enjoy the kind of price premiums they have, with the restaurant and export trades being so strongly curtailed. This next graph I just pulled off is from the last week of January, and it kind of illustrates some of the trends I was talking about. As you can see on the weekly slaughter, it is up nearly 20,000 head. The steer carcass weights were up about 19 pounds. And not surprisingly, with all this additional tonnage, the fed cattle price was down about $8 compared to a year ago. But the number I really want you guys to look at or focus on here is look at the CAB and choice cutout numbers compared to a year ago. Despite all this increase in tonnage, those cutouts were $13 to $18 per hundredweight higher than a year ago. And the strength in premiums, I think, is even for high quality beef is more impressive when you consider that we are putting more and more high quality product in the mix all the time. This graph just shows CAB's acceptance rate, and you can see since 2006, where we had acceptance rates of 14%, here in 2020 it's all the way up to 36%. These graphs kind of continue that trend as well. And you can see on the left-hand side, that's your grid premiums and discounts for prime, CAB, and select product. And on the right-hand side of the grid is the product mix for prime, CAB, choice, and select. And as you can see, even with the kind of outlier year of 2020, these premiums for high-quality beef and the discount for select have all been increasing. And at the same time, we're seeing more product in those areas. Whoops, jump there. The prime product went from 5 to 10%, so we doubled it in that 6-year time frame. We added about 8% to the amount of product qualifying for CAB, increased choice, and the select quality grade decreased by 1/3. And this graph just kind of illustrates how select product is now just in no man's land. As you can see, the red bar here is the percentage select, and it just continues to trend downward as we produce higher and higher quality cattle in the mix. This green bar represents the choice select spread. And you can see, even though select is going down, the spread is growing larger. Jumping ahead here. The second reason I'm excited about this industry is that I believe we're in the beginning stages of a revolution that will transform how we market feeder cattle, differentiating them based on their genetic merit. Now, I know revolution's a pretty strong word, but they say that revolutions change the world which we operate in, the way we look at the world, and historians tell us that revolutions require us to make a choice, to pick a side, and to make a commitment. And from that perspective, I believe that this marketing revolution qualifies under all categories. Pricing feeder cattle on the basis of genetic merit is one of the key ingredients to finally fulfilling the promise of moving this industry towards value-based marketing. With this slide, you see the goldfish jumping from the small bowl to a bigger bowl. And I was just using this to illustrate tonight that we're going to try to talk about expanding our opportunities and giving your operations opportunities to grow. But before we really get into the details about this marketing revolution and the role that Angus Link will play in it, I think it's important that we take a step back and talk about why this change is so important from an industry perspective. The commodity marketing system works great for yellow number 2 corn, but it doesn't work well for the beef industry, and it certainly has been bad for cow-calf producers. I remember when I went off to college, and probably like many of you, I was preparing to get rich and famous in the cattle business. But about on the 3rd day of my freshman economics class, my professor called on me and asked me to read the definition of a commodity market. I opened up my book and it said, in and over time, prices hover in and around break even. After I let that settle for a minute, I realized this is not the kind of business that is a lot of fun to be in. By definition, at any given time, half the producers are making money, half the producers are losing money. This just leads to concentration and consolidation and narrower margins, which in turn raises the bar of what it takes to be a low-cost producer, and we go back into another round of narrow margins, concentration, and consolidation. It just becomes a downward spiral in a commodity market. Now and it forces us to have our emphasis totally on being a low-cost producer and efficiencies of production. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. In fact, they're very important. But when you study most businesses that are truly successful, they're concerned about being a low-cost producer, but their main focus is on the consumer and on creating value. And my biggest complaint, or the animosity I have towards the commodity market, is that the marketplace doesn't reward value. Instead, it actually rewards those who produce below average cattle and sell them at average prices. A commodity marketplace puts a finger on the scale of the market, but not to the benefit of the cow-calf producer. And thankfully, everyone in the industry realized this several decades ago, and they launched what we called the value-based marketing revolution. But this never got completed, and inexplicably, I don't know why, but the cow-calf industry kind of got left out of this equation. Even though we produce the genetics that drive the industry, and we provide more management that affects the outcome of those genetics than anyone else, the cow-calf industry really didn't participate. And when you look at the other segments, like the seedstock industry, they differentiate their product based on value and genetics every single day, thanks to EPDs and performance data. And the feeding industry, they not only get to capture the value of the better management through improved health, but they get to capture all the value from genetics for added growth, efficiency, conversion, average daily gain. And with 75 to 80% of all feedlots selling their cattle either on a grid, formula, or contract basis, they also get to capture the values of increased yield and quality. And of course, the packing industry has always differentiated their products, selling it on various quality grades. And with the branded revolution that CAB created, this is the third year in a row they've sold over 1 billion pounds, which is a wonderful story. But what CAB did even more than that was they sparked the branded revolution. Now we have a plethora, hundreds and hundreds of brands out there, all designed to capture maximum revenue for different markets. When we look back at the cow-calf side of the business, it wasn't that we didn't have or didn't know that the genetics were important. We differentiated the cattle as much as we could, but we did it on things like fill and condition, health status of the calves, lot size, distance from the feed yard, breed composition, and of course reputation. Reputation was a great thing. Unfortunately, your reputation doesn't extend to very many buyers. But the reason we didn't have the change in the cow-calf side of the business is we just didn't have an objective, reliable, consistent, or cost-effective way of conveying the difference in the genetic merit value of a set of calves. And that's what the genetic merit scorecard accomplishes. This picture of my family, and I want to take a step back and kind of look at the why this revolution is needed on kind of a more personal level. I have a feeling that many of you will identify with this story because it's a story that's occurring over and over again in our industry. As Johnette mentioned, some of you may know, my wife and I were in the seedstock business, and I want to tell you about one of our very special customers. They had built a very successful operation, had about 600 females, and when you went and talked to any of the experts, they were doing everything right. They were great stewards of the land. They were low cost, low input producers. They utilized the very best genetics that they could. They had a strategic breeding program that matched up with a marketing plan. They sold their females at a premium. They retained ownership or topped their calves when they sold them at weaning. And maybe more importantly, they raised 2 wonderfully bright, hardworking kids who worked side by side with them on the family ranch, who loved ranching and agriculture. These customers were industry leaders. They were leaders in their community. They were people of faith. They were my friends, and they were people I truly admired. But as you all know, ranching can be tough. And during the same time frame, I witnessed them go through 3 very severe droughts, one of the toughest winters in 50 years. They had a range fire that burned several thousands of acres. They actually had cattle on feed when the Tyson plant burned. And then, like all of us, they had to endure all the gyrations with the COVID and the pandemic. And despite all that they had done right, there was just something fundamentally wrong, because when these 2 incredibly bright kids went off to college, they elected to choose a different career. In the end, I think they said there was too much work, too much risk for too little reward. And one of the things I think is the real kicker about that is I think this family, while they wanted the children to come back, I think mom and dad were actually a little relieved when the kids chose not to. Now, the reason this story is pretty personal to me is because at the very same time, the story with my own kids were following nearly the same plot line. And we knew that there had to be a better way to help make commercial cattlemen more profitable and make an impact on this industry. And after a lot of thought and prayer, we were excited to come to work here for the American Angus Association and to work with the Angus Link program, because I think they had not only the same commitment to making commercial cattlemen more profitable, but they had the size and scale to help drive this revolution. And that's why I'm so passionate and excited to talk to you all about this genetic merit scorecard this evening. It's not a perfect analogy, but I like to kind of describe the genetic merit scorecard as EPDs for a commercial set of calves. Leonardo da Vinci said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and the genetic merit scorecard is a pretty simple concept. You just simply provide us with your herd bull battery information and historic bull battery information if you have it, and we take that information and calculate a score for beef, feedlot, and the grid, with 100 being an average, and of course above 100 would be there. As you can see on your screen, there's also a CAB targeting the brand logo. That goes on any of the cattle that meet a minimum requirement for grid score and also a minimum marbling requirement. We're able to tell buyers of those calves that if properly managed, the calves with the CAB logo will enjoy at least a 50% acceptance rate in the CAB program. The genetic merit scorecard really serves two purposes. And the first, of course, it is a marketing tool. It gives buyers an objective way of knowing the genetic potential in a set of calves and gives them the opportunity to price those calves accordingly in the marketplace. The second thing that the genetic merit scorecard does is it serves as a benchmarking tool. We've all heard the story of the airplane that got lost in the middle of a hurricane, and the pilot came on the speaker of the intercom and he said, "I have bad news and I have good news. The bad news is I don't know where we are and I don't know where we're going, but the good news is we're making incredible time." By having a benchmark and knowing how you compare with others in the industry, whether you're keeping up with the progress of the industry, where you may have shortcomings, and know where you're heading is a very, very important part of the genetic merit scorecard. There becomes two obvious questions then with the GMS scores. Do they work, and do they create value? Well, I can answer to the first question an unequivocal yes, they do work. We now have data on over 135,000 head of cattle with individual carcass information. Sorry about that. And as you can see here, I'm just going to walk you through real quickly. This is for marbling, but as the beef score increases, marbling goes up. The same can be said for ribeye. Beautiful linear lines here. And you can see that as carcass weight as well. But you can tell we're doing actually a really, really good job with these scores of predicting actual phenotypic performance. And that shouldn't be surprising. That is the one thing that the American Angus Association probably does better than anyone else in the world. And that's predicting the genetic merit and the phenotypic differences due to genetics with cattle. Now the second question is, does the genetic merit scorecard add more value? And the answer again is yes, but I would like to say we are just beginning to scratch the surface in this area. Buyers, when this initially came out, were understandably skeptical, and we're still seeing it evolve in the marketplace. But as more and more feeders purchase the cattle and feed them out, there's more and more confidence in the numbers, and we are seeing the marketplace respond in terms of premiums paid. Initially, it just didn't, any calf that had a genetic merit scorecard was receiving a premium in the marketplace. And this was understandable. The people that are doing it tend to be progressive producers with above average genetics, and so they were just paying a premium if the calves had a genetic merit scorecard. But we wanted to know if they were differentiating based on the scores. And so this summer and through the video auctions, we had quite a few cattle that were in the NHTC Never Ever Claim program that were 100% Angus sired that had genetic merit scores. And so we just took that subset because they were so uniform and we divided them in half, with the top 50% of those averaging a 147 for their beef score, the lower 50% with an average of 121. So while both groups were significantly above average and received a significant premium, you can see there was quite a bit of difference in the genetics. The interesting thing was that top 50% group received an additional premium of $12.43 per hundredweight, or over $80 per head. Darrell Royal, the famous football coach for the University of Texas, when he was asked about how he was going to defeat the Oklahoma Sooners in an upcoming game, said, you know, it's not always about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes. Having the right playbook helps, but you have to have the right players, and the Genetic Merit Scorecard lets buyers know that they're putting the right players or the right genetics on the field and in the right position. You know, that's one of the biggest shifts we've seen in the marketplace is while the feeding and packing industry understood the large economic differences that existed because of the differences in performance and quality, grade, and yield, but they really didn't understand the impact of genetics. And this beef on dairy explosion that we've seen has served a valuable purpose in that it has helped educate and confirm to the feeders and packers the value of genetics. One of the things that excites me most about the Genetic Merit Scorecard is that it is fundamentally different than any of the other price differentiators we have in the marketplace. You know, most of the time these programs are based on scarcity and they reward the early adopters. You know, the great example of this was the preconditioning programs. Yeah, you know, initially there were significant premiums. As more and more cattle enrolled or took part, those premiums declined to the point it just became an industry standard, and if you didn't have your shots, you became discounted. And that's where we came up with the saying, what is premium today is commodity tomorrow. But the Genetic Merit Scorecard is actually just the opposite of those programs. The technology gurus call it the network effect. And to illustrate, just take like an app on your phone there and let's pretend it's Facebook. If there's one person on Facebook, it has very little or no value. If there's two, it increases a little bit, 10, 20. But once there are hundreds and millions of people on Facebook, the value of that network grows exponentially. It is the same way with the Genetic Merit Scorecard. The more cattle we sell with the Genetic Merit Score, the more acceptance we will have in the marketplace, the more data we will be able to collect, and the more marketing alternatives we will have to help you market the cattle and capture more value for them. That's one of the other things I think that really differentiates the Angus Link program from other programs out there. Not only do we provide the documentation and the verification, we work with you to help you capture the value for your calves by putting them in front of potential buyers. As you can see here, those calves will be listed and sent out to an email list of over 800 buyers. We have a presence on Facebook, website, etc. But we are committed not only to documenting your cattle, but helping you capture that value. This string of letters probably doesn't make any sense, but this is what, after looking at a lot of the data, we've come up with as our profitability equation. PMP stands for proper management practices, which are kind of a given in the industry today, and that's just proper nutrition and vaccination. AG stands for Angus Genetics, and GMS is Genetic Merit Scorecard, and superior genetics from that. Just going back here and look, you know, everyone always wants to know what drives value in the marketplace. And we went back looking at last summer's data, and you can see these premiums for all the different PVP programs, fairly significant premiums here at the base, but you can see the increase that comes with having Angus sire genetics to those premiums. And that's where PVP comes into the program. They give you market access and market flexibility for your customers. And of course, MR stands for maximum revenue. So that leads me to what we call the holy trinity of marketing. Number one, make sure your calves are a high percentage Angus. Number two, make sure you utilize industry-leading genetics and document them with tools like the Genetic Merit Scorecard. And then number three is to take the steps to provide market access and flexibility that allows cattle to be marketed into specific programs And the best way to do that is through the process verified programs. So really, as we look to prepare for the revolution from a genetic merit scorecard and participating in gaining market access and flexibility, it's really about taking a benchmark and taking the advantage by enrolling in Angus Link. I'm going to shift gears now from the genetic merit scorecard and talk a little bit more about the process verified programs. I borrowed this slide from Johnette, and as you can see, the basic or the foundation PVP is age and source verification. As you move up and put a bell bed on the truck, that's like your NHTC or non-hormone treated cattle. If you add Never Ever 3 to the package, you've added your cake feeder to it. And then of course you have the GAP NHTC Never Ever bundle, which is the brand new truck with all the bells and whistles. In addition to the genetic merit scorecard, we do also have a PVP for Angus sire genetics. And then we do have two programs, the calf management, cattle care and handling, which are oriented around the beef quality assurance and vaccination programs. We're actually excited about these two programs as well, because with all the emphasis being put on sustainability, animal welfare, and the environment, we feel like those are two process verified programs that will have more marketing opportunities in the future. So really, it's a simple process. We'll walk you through it. Just give the ladies a call here in the office, and they will walk you through this enrollment process, which is actually relatively simple to do and to complete. You're already doing the work. It's just time now to get paid for it. Most of the things that require things that you're already doing, like keeping calving and breeding records, preventing vaccines records, weaning calves, castrating, tagging your calves, etc. From a price standpoint, the genetic merit scorecard is provided free of charge, as is the Angus sire genetics PVP. But the age and source is kind of the foundation of all these programs. It's the baseline, and it starts at about $350 per tag. The remainder of those programs will cost anywhere from $750 to $1,200 for a lot of cattle. But if you're looking for specifics and how those are priced out, again, please give us a call and we can help you walk through that process. I want to shift gears a little bit too and talk about that. Angus Link is not just for commercial cattlemen. It is a customer service tool for seed stock producers as well. Every single person that is listening to this presentation, regardless of what business they're in, is in the business of customer service. And the Angus Link program can provide seed stock producers by helping them increase not only their customers' marketing opportunities and help them capture more value for their cattle, but it helps them to build a relationship and combine their superior genetics and management with a marketing program as well. It is a classic win-win scenario. All a seed stock producer needs to do to participate is to transfer their bulls and join in the revolution. 10 years ago, commercial producers appreciated the fact that their seed stock producers were helping them capture the value of their product. Today, they expect it. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And what I mean by that, this is not about making a one-time sell, whether it's selling your calves to a buyer or selling a bull. It's about increasing the lifetime value of that customer. It's about customer retention. And it's about a commitment. It isn't just a tactic. And as seed stock producers, we need to follow the advice of track coaches that tell us to run through the finish line. And the reason they do that is because if we focus on the finish line, we tend to shut down there. They tell us to pick a point 10 to 15 yards past that finish line. And I think that's important because as seed stock producers, we have to understand that the goal is not selling a bull, but we don't reach the finish line until that commercial cattleman actually receives value from the purchase. Angus Link and all of the programs under its umbrella is not for every producer. It is designed for those who truly want to make a difference. I have an economic background and I'm guilty to talking about the dollars and cents of things way too much. And I understand profits are, they're foundational, they're important, they keep the doors open, they're a way to keep score, they're a means to an end. But I think if we're honest with each other, most of us are not in the business solely to make money. We're in it for the lifestyle. You're in it because you enjoy doing deals that involve hundreds of thousands of dollars that are consummated with a handshake and not a contract. You're in it because you love the challenges of ranching and dealing with the markets and Mother Nature. You're in it because you believe in the values that are embodied in this industry and they reflect who you are and who you want to be. You wanted to raise your children this way, and you're in it because you wanted to add to the legacy of those producers from previous generations who did everything and sacrificed everything to preserve this way of life. I know that. I know you're in it because you believe that feeding the world, taking care of the animals in your care, and being a good steward of the land is important and worthwhile. And Angus Link is in it to help keep you in it and help you make a difference. It is an exciting time to be in the cattle industry, and we are going into a period of time that looks very good for the cattle industry as a whole. But we always have to keep in mind it is a highly competitive business, and it will require that producers not only create value for their product, but also document that value so it can be used by the marketplace. Angus Link is designed to help producers become competitive, sustainable, and more profitable. And one thing that really excites me is it allows small to mid-sized producers to remain independent, and it gives them the size and scale that allows them to participate in today's value-based market. I love the name Angus Link. I wish I could take credit for it because I think it does a great job of painting the picture of what we are trying to do. We're forging a chain that connects the seedstock producer with his commercial customers, with feed yards and packers, and all the time keeping in mind that the most vital link in this entire, chain is the commercial producer and the consumer. To kind of wrap up in summary, we've seen a continuous evolution that's led to what I consider is this revolution. And there were some steps there. One was that the commodity beef business gave away to the branded revolution. Then we saw the cash trade give away to grid pricing. And now we're seeing pricing on averages in the feeder cattle market give way to the genetic merit scorecard. It is a time, or an idea, whose time has come. When I got out of grad school almost 30 years ago, I served as a market analyst for CattleFax. And I had the opportunity to work with two feed yard managers in the panhandle of Texas who were highly competitive. They competed on the buy for their cattle, who sold the cattle higher, what one's cost of gains was, what's one's morbidity and pull rates. In fact, one of the producers put up a new sign, an American flag, and the other one 2 weeks later put up a much bigger sign and a much larger flag. I really thought these guys were so competitive that they didn't like each other. And so I was surprised when I visited one of the managers and I sat down in his office, and on his desk there in a beautiful 8x10 frame was a picture of that other feed yard manager. After a while I couldn't take it any longer and I had to ask him, I was like, why do you have a picture of Johnny there on your desk? And he said to me, because every time one of my customers calls me, before I pick up that phone, I look at that picture and I tell myself, if I don't take care of my customer, he will. And if you take home one thing from this presentation tonight, I guess I would like it to be that whoever it is that inspires you to do the very best job, in whether that competitor is the producer from Australia or Brazil, whether it's the dairyman, the pig producer, or the chicken farmer, or whether or not it's your neighbor next door, stick that picture up on the wall and every morning realize that today I have to go out and compete. And also keep in mind that the Angus Link program is there for that very reason. You know, Angus Link is about opening the doors to new opportunities. And it's kind of crazy, but a lot of people probably plan their wedding more than they plan their marriage. And a lot of cattlemen spend more time planning their branding than they actually plan marketing their calves. Like most revolutions, this revolution is market-driven, and it's going to happen with or without us. The question is simply, do we want to participate? And so with that, I would like to give you the invitation to give us a call here at the American Angus Association, or go to our website at anguslink.com, and let's start the process of moving down the road to a better future. Johnette?
Troy, thank you for your passion. That was just fabulous. And I hope each of you that tuned in got to really feel that passion. And you know, I'm going to invite you one more time to go to the bottom of your screen to the questions and answers. Click one of those, hit send. We would obviously love to answer any of your questions tonight so that you feel that you've got the answers that you need. Now know that we may not get to every question tonight. Feel free to reach out to Troy and I at any time, or anyone on the Angus Link team to get your questions answered. To start off with, Troy, for the first question, some of the revolutions are faster than others, some are slow. Do you think this change will take years, or how quick will it be?
Well, I think it's already taken years, and it's been years in the process. And I think we're actually just getting to that tipping point where we have the capability to really accurately and objectively describe the cattle, and where the marketplace is in a position to accept that. So I think we're actually at that point where things are going to speed up. But it is going to be an evolution, and we're pretty stuck in the commodity mindset and way of doing things, and it's just going to take some time as cattle feeders and the packing industry and branded programs make an adjustment. But I'm really excited. I've seen things change more rapidly than they have at any time in the last 10 or 15 years, and I think we're going to see this take hold and be a major player in the market in the next 6 months to 18 months.
Great. So, out of curiosity, are you seeing any livestock markets utilizing this scorecard to help advertise producers' cattle to potential buyers?
Initially, most of the cattle we've seen have been through the video auction markets, where they've done that as well. But we are seeing interest from the sale barn side of things. Oklahoma City National Stockyards have had a sale. We've had several in a couple other places. And I think as we go forward, sale barns are going to see that as a real opportunity to help that smaller to mid-sized producer differentiate their cattle.
You bet, that's true. This one comes from another producer. It seems like in my area, all the calves are listed by weight range, color, vaccine history. Or is this scorecard only going to be valuable for alternate marketing situations? And I know you touched on that a little bit, but maybe, we could go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, you want to tackle that one first, and then I'll come back to it, John? No. I really, and I'm not sure I understand the question. I apologize there a little bit there too, but no doubt that I think this is going to, the exciting thing to me about the genetic merit scorecard is it applies to all cattle, all sizes of cattle. It gives the opportunity to put genetics in where it should be in the pricing equation, and that's to the forefront. And that's going to be the mainstream commodity business where it has the most impact. Without doubt, we talked about those process verified programs, and it has a role there as well. But those programs are more designed just to give producers more market flexibility and more market access.
Great job. And I will agree with Troy. It is one of those things that market access is definitely one of the drivers. And we all know that while we realize load lots sell better. We also know that there's a lot of producers that can't meet that load lot. You know what, this genetic merit scorecard, the agent source verification, is a great way to enter into these programs. Now, let's see. When you say that other segments have been doing value-based marketing, that's true, but reputation cattle is the same thing for me. What should I pay when I have that?
No doubt, reputation feeder cattle. The genetic merit scorecard is just taking a reputation cattle and putting it in an objective way and make it to a rider-based market. Those who have earned a reputation, that's tremendous. But for the most part, you have a reputation because you have a buyer or someone that's bought the cattle, fed them, they know they're healthy, they know they perform, they know they have good genetics. And then another buyer does that and the same, and then you have to have them compete. But it's really difficult to be able to offer those cattle or have a reputation that extends across the industry from a feeder calf side. And that's what the genetic merit scorecard does, is it provides reputation for more sets of cattle that can be used by a wider number of buyers.
You bet, and that is the beauty. What type of education is being offered to buyers at the video auctions, and will they be able to help tout the genetic merit scorecard?
Yeah. We are taking the information, and especially the validation and proof of concept, and some of those graphs I showed you real briefly that showed how the genetic merit scorecard is doing an accurate job of actually predicting performance in the feed yard. We're taking that to the feed yard buyers and others and showing them that so they know that they can confidently put more value and pay a premium for those cattle.
You bet. Well, it looks like we may, oh hey, there is one more question that came in. How is the genetic merit scorecard based on genomic analysis or EPDs?
Of course, the EPDs of your bull battery, most of those are genomically enhanced, so that isn't playing into that. But currently, right now, we are just using the EPDs of your herd bull battery to calculate those GMS scores or the genetic merit scorecard. We've been really, really happy that we're trying to keep this very simplistic and cost-effective, and we've been excited to see how well it's done in describing the differences in cattle. Maybe somewhere down the line, we might look at a genomically enhanced genetic merit scorecard, but we haven't done that to this point.
You bet. Here's another great question. If I have a herd that has had some Hereford, but mainly Angus, can I get the genetic merit scores?
That's a great question, and I should have addressed that too. Yes, you don't have to have 100% Angus sires in your bull battery. We do ask that they be predominantly Angus, but as long as they're above 50%, we can go and utilize the other breeds, whether it be Hereford, Gelbvieh, Charolais, etc., and still calculate the genetic merit scorecard with those bulls.
Great. How do you calculate the beef score, and what choices can we make to increase our beef score?
And I'm not smart enough to explain to you the calculations in all their detail, but they're going to be very, very closely correlated to your dollar beef score with your herd bulls that you're putting in your battery. And really, that's why we use those three scores, feedlot, grid, and beef, as they correspond very closely to the dollar F, dollar G, and dollar B numbers for your herd bulls. And so when you're selecting those herd bulls, you need to use those numbers. Now, admittedly, there's all those component parts, and once you get your genetic merit scorecard and kind of have your benchmark, that's one of the things we can do is kind of sit down and work with you and your seed stock supplier to make sure that we're moving that number in the right direction and making the right selection decisions from a genetic standpoint.
Well, and Troy, do you want to mention the fact that some of the bull sale catalogs have that targeting the brand logo? That might be a great way for them to choose some of the bulls that they might be looking at.
No, that's a great point. As Jeanette said, a lot of your seed stock producers and partners will have that targeting brand logo on their bulls. And that logo does correspond with our targeting the brand logo as well. So the bulls that are carrying that logo, if bred to average or above average cows, will actually qualify for our targeting the brand logo as well.
You bet. Are AI sires taken into account when calculating the genetic merit scores?
Yes, absolutely. We just need to document what AI sires you've used and that's accurate, but we do use the AI sires in those calculations as well.
Will there be value to this program for a producer that feeds out his own calves?
I think there's going to be some opportunities, firstly with the process verified programs, to gain market access into other programs. Honestly, if you're feeding out your calves, the genetic merit scorecard has limited value except for as a benchmarking tool and to help you to know where you're making progress and to know where you're keeping up rather to others and where you may have some problems or holes there. But if you're retaining ownership, you're capturing a lot of the value of the genetics, or you're not selling them till they go further into the supply chain.
You bet. When you say use industry-leading genetics, what does that really mean?
That's a great question. First of all, I work for the American Angus Association, so I'm going to say that starts with having an Angus bull. But from industry-leading genetics, I'm just talking about bulls that are in that top 25 to 30% for the various multiple trait analysis as we look at from an industry standpoint that really can drive profitability. And of course, when we're looking at the feedlot side of things or the feeder calf, we're looking at more of the terminal traits. Not that as a producer, you also have to keep in mind the maternal traits, but we're looking at the terminal side at growth, conversion, quality, yield, grade primarily, carcass weight.
All right. What do you see on harvest sheets from the best Angus genetics? How do they compare to crossbreds, 4% prime, or Charolais for yield grade? And yeah, I totally missed that.
We probably haven't seen enough data, especially on the Cushy cattle, but we know that they're going to be some of the highest grading cattle in the industry. Among the mainstream beef breeds, Angus is obviously the highest grading there, but they would probably be a notch below and I'm not even sure how to pronounce that, I apologize, on the Kashi or Cushy cattle. And Charolais from a yield grade standpoint, typically, of course, the Charolais are going to be better from a yield grade standpoint as they tend to have a little better muscle to bone ratio than Angus as a whole.
Are there any packers offering premiums for the cattle with the genetic merit scorecard?
Well, I would argue yes. They're not specifically paying on the basis of the genetic merit scorecard, but the packers have the grids in many of those cases that are rewarding quality grade, yield, carcass weight, dressing percentage, such, which is all detailed with the genetic merit scorecard. And it's really designed more for the feeder to identify those right genetics and position them to sell those on the a grid from a packer standpoint. But the packers are rewarding those higher grading, higher quality genetics.
You bet they are. Do cattle need to be paired or DNA verified to qualify for the program?
No, this is a commercial program, and we're looking at it as a pen of feeder cattle, and we're looking at your entire herd bull battery and that as well, and so they do not have to be parent verified. We just verify that you actually have had those bulls transferred into your name and that they are owned by you.
You bet. And what does it take to enroll in the non-hormone treated cattle program, which is NHTC, or the NHTC Never Ever 3 program, Troy?
Well, as Johnette is our Director of Verification Programs, and she's kind of our resident expert, I'm going to let Johnette tackle this one here too.
It is not difficult to enroll in these programs. The non-hormone treated cattle program obviously speaks for itself. You're not giving those calves any hormones. The Never Ever 3 would be no antibiotics, no animal byproducts. or no hormones. More than anything, I think if you have interest in some of these specific programs, I really encourage you to call our staff, because at the end of the day, we want the programs to fit your program and your management style. And they are so good to walk you through what's going to be the best options for you, and to maybe step you through what to do this year, possibly next year with your management, so that you're not frustrated with your enrollment process.
Very good.
Okay, and Troy, how are you incorporating the cow base into the scorecard? Are you using the past bulls used in the assumption of genetics in the cow herd?
Yes, and that's a very good question. The current herd bull battery represents 50% of the genetics, but the other 50%, of course, is the cow herd. And the more information and the more historical bull information we have, the better job we can do of describing that cow herd and making that genetic merit scorecard more accurate. And so that's why we use the historical bull battery information.
You bet. Do you feel that GAP will continue to bring a premium with programs like beef care that is being initiated?
And I'll let John tackle this one here too as well, but I certainly think GAP will continue to see significant premiums in the marketplace. The beautiful thing with our partnership with Earth Claims and the GAP program is that the reason that GAP has seen such significant premiums in the marketplace, which has been bigger than any of the process verified programs out there, has been because they do have a designated market and supply chain where those cattle are going. Not to say that these other programs won't make an impact over time, but that's what really separates the GAP cattle, is they have a home, and a very good home for those cattle to go to.
You bet. That is a great point, Troy. And with that being said, our service partnership with Earth Claims allows you as a producer, if you choose, to bundle those pricing and to get an on-site review with one person. So, we're very judicious of your time, if you will. So, we want your enrollment process to be fast and efficient, but yet to check all those boxes. So you're exactly right. Will I receive more money for my feeder calves than it costs me to enroll them?
Now, there is no guarantees, and there's always a lot of factors that go into that, but I can say that there is, whether it be the genetic merit scorecard, the VP programs, there's hardly a better return on your investment historically. And when we look at the premiums on average that we received for all those classes of cattle, they have always more than covered the cost of enrolling, or by a pretty significant margin. So I want to say yes, but there's always a lot of things that go into that. But I really say confident. I can recommend full-heartedly to participate in those Angus Link programs, and I'm sure that when I touch base with you a year after, you'll be re-enrolling.
I think Troy's really trying to say it's much better than buying a lottery ticket. So, you know what? We'd sure be glad to talk to you about that. Can I get scores on my calves only? So can I just get genetic merit scores on my calves? Do I have to do anything else?
Yeah, you do have to the basic program that everyone has to enroll in is the agent source verification. And so that's at the smallest numbers or whatever, it's about $3.50 or $3.50 per ear tag. And so those calves, the genetic merit scorecard is actually free, but to begin that process, everything has to be agent source verified.
That's right. Does the calf hide color matter for the genetic merit score? I'll just go with that.
No, but honestly, because they have to be predominantly Angus, and with what we've had at this point, almost all the calves have been black-hided, so it's hard to really make a differentiation there. But technically, as long as they meet the requirements of being predominantly Angus, if there were some off-colored calves there, it doesn't. But we have seen in the marketplace consistency and uniformity, and as we talked about, Angus sire genetics matter.
Great, Troy. Again, thanks so much for doing that. We're going to close up here. Again, once this webinar is over, you're going to be linked to a survey. And you know what? We would love for you to go on and fill out that survey so that, what, we can bring you great webinars like this tonight, because we need to know what it is you want to learn about. So please fill that out. Tomorrow, if you would like to go to angus.org, you can see this webinar in its entirety, or you will be emailed this. You know what? We really know that come March, you're going to be really busy, but we're going to tell you tonight, on March the 30th, there's going to be another really cool webinar that's going to be awesome. So we want you to mark your calendar now so that you can join us on March the 30th. It won't be Troy and I, so it may not be quite as cool, but we know it'll be awesome, okay? And more than anything today, Angus University launched their website. Yep. So all these really neat videos, webinars, fact sheets, they're all organized by topic. And we literally pulled that up here a little bit ago tonight. You can get to that at angus.org/university. I'm sorry about that. And I really invite you to check it out. That is a fabulous website. Cool information, education beyond belief. Please take the time. Thank you. Troy thanks you, I'm sure.
Very much.
And we look forward to seeing you again in another month or so.
Have a great evening.